Thank you. So I'm delighted today to talk about our work in Zion. So Zion is a French company, is a very young French company which is specialized in conversational bots, especially call bots for call centers. So we are adding artificial intelligence to our tools in order to understand natural language processing when it comes to customer services, I mean calls and routines about services, and also adding some empathy and adding some emotional artificial intelligence actually. So my position in this company is artificial intelligence team lead. So regarding the agenda, we will start by a first overview about conversational bots today. What are the use of conversational bots today in customer services, and are they really intelligent? Because we are talking a lot about artificial intelligence and intelligence in conversations, and we will see if this intelligence is well perceived by customers actually. And then the second part, we will focus on the empathic bots. So there are two parts in this part. So the first one, how to capture an emotion displayed by the user from the text, I mean from his verbal content and from his voice. And once we have this emotional information by the user, how can bots handle these emotions, and maybe how can he or she express emotions back. And in the last part, we will talk about how to measure the impact of empathetic bots on user experience, and how to measure globally the impact of any changement in the conversational artificial intelligence on the user experience. So before I start, you can interrupt me anytime if you have any question. Don't hesitate to do so. So I will start by an overview on the numbers and the markets of conversational AI today. So you can see on the screen some numbers. So the first one is the 27% of yearly growth of the bot market. So you can see it's huge, because when we compare it, for example, to the cloud market, it's only 12. So bots are really getting heat, and companies have sped towards conversational AI in the hopes of cost reduction, but also other important, let's say, impacts. Also, when we see some expectations are very high when it comes to conversational AI. For example, Gartner predicts that 15% of customer service interaction will be handled by artificial intelligence by 2021, it means next year. So it's a 400 increase from 2017. And the last, also huge number that we can highlight is that in the banking area, especially, in 2 years, so according to Lauren Foy, which is also an expectation, 90% of customer interactions will be using chatbots. So when we say using chatbots, it means that people are interacting with chatbots and customers are interacting with chatbots, but also employees could use chatbots to check for detail, for example, or to check for some information. So there is a lot of use when we talk about chatbots in customer interaction. So when we focus a little bit on the channels of communication used today, you can see in my screen that the phone is still the superstar of the customer service. You can see that baby boomers and retirees especially are using the phone in order to asking questions when it comes to banking, insurance, and so on. Also, we can notice that the yellow part of the graph, which is the chat part, is getting hit in younger millennials and older millennials. It's getting success among younger people. So that's why in Zion and also other companies, we work on chatbots and voice bots. We think that in Zion, we think that the voice is really important, and we have to handle the natural language processing and the way people they pronounce their requests. Also, it's not mentioned in this slide, but you can see other. For example, voice assistants are also being a success, especially for younger millennials, for younger people. So, so why do we need callbots? I mean, why Zion is specialized in this area? I think there is a lot of advantages of using a callbot when we talk about improving customer experience, because we reduce the time, the waiting time in the queue when we call. It's available 24 hours a day, seven days a week. It can, we could have customized answers depending on our case, and we can have multilingual support. Also, for the company, a company who is using callbots or chatbots or voicebots in her customer service, there is a real impact on its branding. A company which is using chatbots is a competitive, up-to-date company. And also, of course, we cannot talk about automation, without talking about costs reduction and also post-call actions reduction. So the time to process the calls are very, there is a big impact on that, and reduced also the recall. Also, it's very important for Zion also to mention this fourth impact, which is the employee tasks, where call center agents, human agents, can concentrate on processing higher added value tasks, and the agent has more availability, has more time for complex situation when all the repetitive tasks are handled by the bots. So those are our goals in Zion. And when we see in the market, when we go deeper into the analysis of companies that used a chatbot or callbot, they had a great impact on productivity, a great impact on gaining time. Also, it's kind of correlating gain. However, if you see in the graph, you see that only 8% of companies reported an enhancement, let's say, on user satisfaction when using a bot, a conversational bot. When we go deeper into this disappointment, actually, and this impact, which is kind of poor on user satisfaction, there is a study actually conducted by Opinion Matters among French participants, who are 36% would rather never have to interact with conversational bots. 38% they see no benefits in interacting with them, and 31% are, based on their experience, they encountered problems interacting with the conversational bots. So we can see that the hype is real, that there is a real impact on cost saving for companies and time reduction, and maybe also waiting time reduction. But we can see that people, final users, are not really happy with that, or maybe they are kind of afraid of using this technology. So in our opinion, I don't know if you are familiar with this hierarchical pyramids of needs. Actually, it's inspired of human needs. When we need shelter, we need to eat, and then we need other stuff in life to feel, to feel joy or to feel positive. So the first part, when we talk about boats, the first part is that the boat has to be accessible, it has to be useful, and it has to be easy to use. So that's why we are adding natural language processing, we are adding voice processing, and it is made available on phone or on websites. So we reached those 3-4 needs, let's say, but to reach a real good user engagement, we think that emotions have to be handled. Emotions have to be understood by the bot, and maybe we have to reason about those states, and we have to show empathy to users. That's why we will talk about the empathetic callbots or chatbot. How does it work? And the first part, let's say, it's how to capture emotions during a dialogue with the bot. So the first lesson, I think, the first lesson to review is, emotions in the psychological meaning. So in psychology, emotions are often represented in two categories, in two approaches. The first one is the continuous one. So the continuous emotions, where we can represent the different emotions in the same graph, because we think that those emotions are not independent, so they are dependent on each other. So the first scale, the measure, which is the valence that you see in the screen, so it measures how pleasant or unpleasant to experience this emotion. For example, fear and disgust are negative emotions, joy and surprise are positive emotions. The second dimension is the arousal, which we can call also the intensity, where arousal, we can have a real intense expression of emotion or experience of an emotion, or we can have like a small experience. And dominance, some emotions are more dominant than other. For example, it's known that the anger emotion is very dominant and could have a real impact on how we behave. So this is the first approach, how to represent emotions. The second one, we cannot talk about emotions without talking about the categories of Ekman. I think it's very known. So Ekman started to say that we have 6 basic emotions that are independent. So we have 6 categories, and then other categories in psychology. Psychology said that we have more than 6, and we have subcategories. For example, the rage is a subcategory of the anger, and so on. So there is no approach better than the other. Just as you can guess, choosing an approach over another should be related to the choice of the algorithm that you will be using. So the second lesson to review when talking about chatbots or callbots is the technical schema. So it's kind of the same, of course. For the callbot and voicebot, we have speech components, and for the chatbot, we only use text. So for the callbot, for example, so the first step is to recognize words and to understand words from the speech, so from the voice of the user. So this is called automatic speech recognition. And then once we have words, we can process by natural language processing, understanding the requests of the user, and then trying to have a response. It's very often this component is also linked to another component of the client, which is some information system in order to have access to the data, I mean the internal data of the customer. And then once we have the response, we can translate it to speech, and then the callbot is pronouncing the response. So for emotion detection, for emotion detection, we can either work on voice or text, or also both. We can work on both in order to capture the emotion felt and experienced by the user. And then once we have this information, we will see how can the bot handle this information, and what kind of actions and decision he or she has to make. So the first, let's say, type of emotion detection is the voice. So I started by the voice because in Zion we think that we believe that voice is a very strong cue, and we can capture a lot of information, relevant information from the voice. So we have seen a huge advancement in emotion detection area from the voice. So it's the first step, let's say, it's to have the data. So the first step is to have the annotated data or labeled data with emotion labels. So in Zion, we do this with our own data from our interactions with the callbot. We have a whole team members of the team are working on annotation and with kind of scientific protocol, let's say, on annotating voice data. So annotating voice data is annotating emotions, categories of emotions, and also subcategories of emotions. And then we have our algorithms. So it's machine learning approach, where we train our algorithms using this data. So of course, when using this data, we are talking about pre-processing this data and extraction features from the vocal data. So we extract we will not go into technical details, but there is a lot of features related to the voice and a lot of features related also to the emotions, so we have to extract both of them. So once we extracted features, we train our model. So our model is a deep learning model in order to classify the data. So for the second way to capture emotions is the text. So once we have the transcription of the text from the speech to a sentence, we can capture emotions. So emotion detection in the text is a part of what we call sentiment analysis. So I think Thomas, the talk before me was focused on this part. So sentiment analysis is usually used when we talk about reviews, for example, and where we talk about capturing some feedback, some emotional feedback on social medias. And in our case, we are interested more in knowing the label of the emotion that is being displayed through the texts. So there is a slight difference between those two approaches. So as for the voice detection, emotion detection in the voice, we are also using a machine learning approach where we have the data and we have the representation of the text. And then we train our, you can see my screen, the LSTM do the magic. So the long short-term memory can do the magic in order to classify our text and our user requests in an emotion category. So as any innovative project, we have challenges. We have, I mean, it's the crossover actually of machine learning challenges, ASR challenges, and NLP also. And also, we cannot talk about emotions and data without talking about data ethics. So for the first part of challenges, we have to figure out which data type we need. Actually, there is a lot of data type we can have, for example, for the voice, data sets available in public, there is a spontaneous data set, and there is also acted or elicited emotions in those data sets. So we have to be careful, because sometimes when we train our model with the wrong data, and then we want to test it, with our real data, we can have bad surprises. So we have to ask those questions before the project. And also, it's very difficult to label the data. I mean, for emotions, it's very subjective. Sometimes we can perceive anger. I mean, from one person to another, we can be different on how we perceive the emotion behind the voice or behind the texts. And also, all machine learning projects, we have limited resources, time and memory. And also the last one is the explainability. How can we explain why the algorithm is saying that this voice is angry voice and this voice is a joyful voice? Also, like I said, there is a lot of challenges in automatic speech recognition and natural language processing today. We can talk about some challenges. So, for example, feature extraction. Actually, there is many approaches about which feature is relevant for emotion, especially in the voice. And also, sometimes when you listen to conversations between users and the callbot, you can see that emotions are elicited actually by this kind of disappointment or misunderstood of the natural language processing tool or the automatic speech recognition tool. So how can we say actually if the user is not is angry because of the callbot or because of the service that is being provided by the client? And then for the data ethics challenges, we all know that emotions are considered as sensitive data. When we know, I mean, when we can control emotions, we can have kind of manipulation. So we can have kind of misuse of this information. So we really have to be careful about the data and about the emotional data. And also we can have a kind of discrimination problem or biases problem in like in every machine learning project. So for the second part, once we have captured the emotion during a dialogue with the bot, what can we do with this information? Actually, now I'm talking about another project. So it's my PhD project where we built a conversational bot with social rules and goals. Because actually in real life, our emotions are generated because we have goals and we have social rules. So if something happens in our environment which is contradictory with our goal, we will, for example, experience anger or negative emotion, let's say. And social rules also, for example, if someone is insulting the bot and the fact of insulting the bot is contradictory for example, with politeness. So the bot had to be has to answer in a human way, let's say natural way, and I mean, trying to stop to stop this kind of I mean of behavior. So during my PhD thesis, we built a bot which has a list of goals and social rules and can reason actually about his emotions and the emotion captured during a dialogue with a user, and he can or she display emotions in his verbal content, his prosody, or even by taking actions. For example, in the callbot or contact center field, we can transfer the call if we see that the user is very angry, or his situation is very urgent, is very complex. So this is kind of empathy who is displaying by the behavior of the bot. So actually, yeah, I don't have much time left, sorry. So you can see that on YouTube, actually, we are not the only one who are working on emotional bots. You can see on YouTube, for example, Amazon Alexa is getting more and more emotional, and she even can display with her voice intensities, many different intensities during a dialogue. So why we are talking about this? This is just an idea, so it's not really proven, but in some studies we found a correlation between the profiles, I mean, human profiles, and the way they express their emotions. So, for example, sales agents can be, I mean, very often extroverts. So they share very easily compared to other people their emotions. And we can be inspired by those studies for chatbots or callbots, for example, because they are part of the workforce of the company. And maybe if our chatbot is doing sales tasks, he has to be more intense when he's expressing his emotions. For example, for technical callbot or chatbot, it has to be more, let's say, more willing to share intense emotions. I'm sorry about, yeah, I will click. So for emotional bots, during my PhD, we conducted many experiments, about emotional job seeker bots, without any context awareness. It means that this bot expresses his emotions without any regulation. And the second one is the third one, is a job seeker but with context awareness. It means that he or she can regulate his emotions because he is in a professional context. And you can see on the graph that participants prefer interacting with the third one. That's why, I mean, the takeaway message from this slide is to be aware of the context and not building emotional boats that are kind of, let's say, crazy, and they can be emotionals even, I mean, even in a professional context. It can be, I mean, very ill-perceived. So for how to measure an impact, I mean, once we have built our empathic conversational bot, how can we sure that people and users will be happy to talk with the bot, and how can we compare it with non-emotional bot and non-empathetic bots? So that we have many approaches. So we can talk about the quantitative approach, where we can have surveys and statistical analysis. How many people talked with the bot today, or in the last week, or something like this. But also we can have a quantitative approach when we are measuring user experience. with user interviews, with surveys, and trying to find out why do users have this attitude or making this behavior when he's talking to the bot. For example, when people are leaving the conversation with the bot, we have to know more about the reasons that they are behaving in this way. Also, recently, so Google launched the last chatbot, which is Mina, and they introduced also an evaluation metric, a human evaluation metric. So it's also the awareness of the context. It means that the chatbot is answering with coherence, with a certain coherence with the context. So it's this human evaluation metrics, sensibleness and specificity average, SSA. So the takeaway messages from this presentation is that emotional bots and empathetic bots have a real good impact on the user satisfaction, and especially when capturing the emotion, which is a very valuable information, we have to take actions accordingly. So before starting a project, you have to choose wisely the theory of emotion, which is relevant to your application. Also the kind of data, which is acted or spontaneous data, the amount also of data, which feature you have to extract from the voice, for example, to have an accurate model. Also, you have to question yourself about the ethics of this emotional data, because it's very sensitive data. And you need to have a real robust user experience measurements. And also, of course, building bots with a context awareness. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Seth, for the 3 minutes.
You're a little bit over, but you're in our break right now. You do have a couple of questions. If anyone does want to take a break, we will, why don't you look at those questions, or I could read them to you and see if you can answer them quickly. But for anyone who does want to step away, we will have the next session in 7 minutes, and we'll try to get at least a 5-minute pause for everyone in there. So we have a first question from Boris Evelson. I'll read it to you. Detecting emotion is important, but just detection by itself is not actionable. How do you translate detected emotion into intent, as in, this customer intends to, and therefore we should take the following action? Prescriptive.
Okay, it's a very interesting question, and actually it was my PhD thesis. So actually, emotions and actions are very related. So when we detect emotions, we can kind of guess which kind of action the user intend to have. So how to translate emotions and also intended actions of the user to an intention from the bot? I think this is the question. So it depends on the strategy of the client. For example, some clients prefer to involve human agents when it's a critical or very intensively, let's say, a situation, emotionally intensive situation, really complex, or we can change the answer accordingly. Actually, when I talked about the experiment during my PhD thesis, it was in the verbal content, the chatbot or the voice bot can choose some, let's say, some words, some emotional words to show empathy. And then the user can be kind of relieved when he's talking to the bot, but he's, he's feeling that he's understood, and the situation, the emotional situation is understood, is handled by the bot.
This kind of feeds into the second question, which came from Thomas Metcalf, who just spoke. In a response from a bot, what's more important for customer experience, the message or the tone? of the response.
Okay, so emotion and speech. I'm sorry, I'm reading the question.
When a bot responds, what's more important, the message or the tone?
Yes.
Feel free to say both.
Yeah, actually, in a scientific way, why we talk about voice, because when we are using our voice, even when we are regulating our emotion and we trying to, we try to regulate our emotion, some cues in the voice could have, for example, the speech rate and the frequency and also the kind of breathing can be a really good indicator about the real emotional state. So that's why researchers in emotions are very interested in voice. But actually, when it comes to customer service, the text is the verbal content. I mean, in the text is very, very important because users are not regulating. I mean, they want to say this this sentence. So it's kind of how to say it. I mean, yeah, they thought about it, and it's not kind of impulsive. So both are, I think, both are very important.
And they're linked, of course. All right. Well, thank you very much, Alya.